All right, we're going into it.
Let's do it.
What is up, everybody? It is episode 2.
I'm
we
excited.
have made it to 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. This is going to be so cool. I mean, the first one was good, but I think the second one's going to be better.
2.
And wait until 20.
Ooh. Speak it into existence.
Visions. Dreams.
Visions.
Right?
That's what we talked about last time.
We did.
But this time, we're going into something I'm super excited about because for those who are listening to this, we have church planters, we have young kids that are a part of a church team, whether that's on staff or that's volunteering. We have businessmen and women that are in the community. Today's topic is maintaining a leadership culture, because your leadership team has been with you through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Has been with you through ups and downs, has been with you for over, some of them 20 years, a majority of them over 10 years.
Right.
And so today I want to talk to you kind of about that. You have 30 years here at New Life, and it blows my mind because that's longer than I've been alive. So I want to go specifically into that. How have you kept a staff or kept a team, because not all of them are paid staff,
Right.
but kept a team that follows your leadership for 10 plus years?
That's a very good question, Robert. I honestly think, I really think that this is a huge key. I go back to when I first came to New Life, and the way that I was trained and the way that I saw it modeled by lead pastors was very top down. It was very organizational. It's a chart. He's or she's the top person, and it wasn't relational. I never saw it modeled that way. But when Lydia and I came to New Life, I'm 27 years old, Lydia's 24, and I just had a different view of what leadership is. Leadership is relationship. Leadership is relationship. It's about me connecting with someone that I believe in, I want to pour my life into. I build relationships, we build a friendship, and then I lead them. Now, because you're asking me, why would people stay around? I think they stay around, it's not because of the money. I can guarantee you that, as you well know. It's not the church will never be able to pay what the marketplace does.
Yeah.
So how do you keep people? Because it's based on what Jesus said. Now, this is what I was going to tell you. 27 years old, and I made my mind up that I was not going to do church leadership like I had seen it, because it was fake. It was fake. It was like, okay, you have your office over there, you have your office over there, we have a list of da-da-da-da, this is our policy procedure. It was all about that. Well, I don't want to do that. That is yucky. Jesus said to his disciples, this is God in the flesh, said to his disciples, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. Because a friend tells his friends everything. I'm going to tell you everything. You're my friend, I'm not going to hold back anything. Now, this is God in the flesh, the Son of God, builds this team that literally changed the earth, these 12 knuckleheads, and they were knuckleheads. But it's because Jesus treated them like friends. Okay? So for me, when I think of Jeanette's been with me 20 years. Rick's been with me 15 now.
Now, these are your executive pastor, and Pastor Rick is over our entire business office.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and then I think of, Everett Claiborne.
Yep.
Everett Claiborne is my friend now for 35 years, but Everett's an elder of our church. He doesn't leave, he stays. Why does he stay? It's not because of position, it's because of relationship. So to answer your question, I think if you're going to keep people, you become their friend. It doesn't change my my responsibilities as a leader. Sometimes I have to, as you know, sometimes bring a word of correction.
Oh, do I know?
No, whatever.
Oh, do
it's
I
happened
know?
one time.
Oh.
Or twice.
I'm like 7 or 8.
Or 7 or 8. But my point is, but I can't do that. You can't speak into someone's life and bring a word of correction, or like, hey man, come on, knock that stuff off.
Yeah.
Unless they know, that's exactly right. That's Greek. Unless they know you love them.
Yeah.
Okay. I tell the staff, I've said this for years, you can't make one withdrawal, unless you've made 9 deposits. And I see pastors and leaders all the time. They're always making withdrawals, confronting. And they've not made 9 deposits of, hey, I believe in you, I love you, how are you? Spending time with them. See what I'm saying? So you're saying, how do you spend long term? How do you build a team that's going to be with you long term? It's got to be relational, not organizational.
I'm literally shook right now because I've heard you say that phrase, the 9 deposits for the one, what did you say? Deduction?
Yeah. Withdrawal. Because I think of it like a bank account.
Like a bank.
Yeah, checking account.
I've heard you say that all my life.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times have I told you jab, jab, right hook?
Same thing. Right.
I'm sitting here right now, and for people who don't know, my position here at the church is the communications director, and I'm very much on like this thank you economy thing where it's like we have to show our people like we love them and we care about them, and here's the gospel and blah, 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 blah before we ever ask them to come to a Sunday gathering.
Exactly.
But that's the exact same thing.
It is. Because it is the Jesus way. This is not some new thing. It's Jesus CEO. The way Jesus runs his company is he pours his life. He look at what he did and who he drew. He drew to himself knuckleheads. I mean, Peter, are you kidding? Mr. Foot and Mouth. But he says, I believe in you. He calls out the best in him. He puts up with his stuff. And then he calls him on his stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's not that, we all just love each other. Why can't we all get along? It's also, I love you enough to tell you this. Peter, he said, Satan, get behind me.
Yeah.
To Peter.
But the first time he met him, he also said that he will build his church upon him.
He did.
I actually just read that yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing, Robert, I would say to keep a staff long-term is to make sure that we talked about it last time, so we won't spend a lot of time, but make sure your vision's clear. People don't give to need. They give to vision. And that means money. But it also means time and energy and their love and their affection.
Yeah.
For 30 years, next year, Lydia and I have been talking about a kind of church, this kind of church where we welcome everybody, we love everybody unconditionally, and we're reaching the lost, the people that a lot of churches don't want to come to their church. That's who we want to come to our church. So when you keep telling that story and casting that vision, people of like vision are attracted to that. And you think now we're in the stage of multiplying, like you said, 6 campuses, and think of all the pastors and leaders we've sent out.
Yeah.
It's well beyond just here in Bakersfield or Kern County. But these people are my tribe.
Yeah. Now, speaking of sending people out, did you have to kick some people out along the way? Because last time we talked about keeping the circle tight with the visionaries and the dreamers and the people who are focused on mission with you.
Right.
So to have a staff that follows you through thick and thin, there's got to be some people that you've been like, hey, I don't think you're going to be on the boat with me.
Yeah. By your vision, you choose who you lose. By your vision, you choose who you lose. Through the years, I've had to release people because they couldn't go along with the vision. And I love them, but I can almost say never. I try never to say never. But what I was going to say is the people that I've had to release through the years, it's as being a part of what we're doing here, but it very seldom was out of spite or, hey, I just really hate your guts. It was an understanding on my part that this has happened with thousands of people. Robert, you have to remember that. I mean, I literally have watched thousands of people walk away from this church because they couldn't go with us on the vision. But by your vision, you choose who you lose. And there's the other part of it, be very careful when they're going, don't burn the relational bridge, because a lot of times, and I've seen this many times, they come back.
Yeah. Because
they think something's wrong with New Life or something's wrong. So, don't burn the bridge.
Can you explain the importance, or maybe sometimes the lack of importance, that you have put into the personal relationships in your leaders and staff? Like, can you give me a story maybe of when you really had to do the pause, I'm going to deposit moments?
I can remember many times with Jeanette in the early days especially, because she really was. She'll tell you she was rough around the edges. She was truly a agnostic, not an atheist, but an agnostic throughout all of her adult life. She comes to New Life, she commits her life to Jesus, starts the relationship, and And then as she began to get involved in discipleship and then leadership, there was lots of times that we invested our lives. Lydia, a lot. Me as well. Bill Cheney back in the day, he was her primary mentor. Bill's one of my dear friends. He's our district supervisor with Foursquare here. But I think you have the importance of pouring your life into that person relationally. Again, we'll go back to what we said at the start. It's everything.
But how do you know, like, did you know that person A or person B, person C was going to give you an ROI on that?
No.
How do you blindly, because I'm a very, what is the ROI of this? What is the ROI? I think I say ROI maybe 45,000 times a day.
Yeah.
But how do you even do that with the...
I don't think of it that way. I really don't think of it like, okay, let me pause. I do think of it that way when I know they're a part of my inner circle. Okay? So there's two different conversations.
Okay.
When I know it's the concentric circles of relationships. Jesus had his 12.
Yeah.
Within that 12, he had his 3. Within that 3, he had his 1. And he was intentional about who he hung out with and who he poured his life into, who got those experiences. So here's Jesus. He had John, who is the beloved. He's the closest. He's his buddy. But then he had Peter, James, and John that often he would say to the other 9, y'all stay. We're going to the Mount Transfiguration. You just said, we'll be back. Oh, that ain't fair. Well, Jesus wasn't into fairness. Jesus was into pouring his life into the 3 that he knew would be the pillars down the road. So there is that intentionality, the
ROI.
Rate of what?
Rate of return, or
Rate of
I say the return on investment.
Return on investment.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think you have to be very careful as a leader that you don't look at everything that way, because most of the people that I have, well, you're a perfect example of what I'm going to say. You came back to New Life not because, and let me start this way. I would see you at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And Lydia and I just love you. We love Robert. We're not trying to, hey, we need to get Robert back to the church. We'd love to have you come back to the church. But that wasn't the intention of befriending you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was just, you love people. You love everybody, and you pour your life into people. Then there's a possibility some will come. I'm just thinking through all the people that are around me are people that I didn't say, oh, I'm going to pour my life into you to get you on my team. I pour my life into you, I befriend you because I love people.
Is that kind of where people often say, like, Christians have a light about them? Or like leaders, especially in the faith community, they have just this glow. Mm-hmm. People are attracted to them. Mm-hmm. Is it because you're not looking at what they can give you, but you're just loving people?
That's it. And the beauty of that is, Robert, everything, look at the life that Lydia and I live. We are the most blessed people. I mean, I'm serious. We are way more blessed than we deserve, for sure. But we didn't set out with that in mind. We set out to love people and to make friends and to pour our lives into the people like Jesus did, right? And out of that then flows these beautiful relationships, and then you get them into discipleship, then into leadership, and then, I mean, think Wendy. Okay, Wendy and Sal, they're back in Texas now and all that. And
now, Pastor Wendy she came here as a bartender. And someone who didn't necessarily know God. Then she come to know God here at New Life. She was reborn again here. Mm-hmm. She became on staff. She led our creative department. She was our Northwest campus pastor. Then from the Northwest campus pastor, got sent out from our church to now be Southern, what's her title?
Well, she's a supervisor over the Mid-South District for Foursquare. It's over 6 states.
And she's the only woman in that position.
The one of 12 throughout the United States. She's the only woman.
So I'm just putting perspective, because not everybody listening will know who Wendy is.
Right.
So I just wanted to edify her a little bit, because she definitely deserves a tremendous amount of edification.
She deserves props because... anyway, she's a rock star for Jesus. But everybody looks at her now.
Yes.
But they don't look at her and Sal when they first came to New Life. And as you said, Sal literally hated the church. He was raised in a cult, really. With Wendy, she at least had her last experience with Jesus as a 14-year-old. She did know Jesus, but she left church at 14. Never, so she's kind of on the outside. Found Jesus again in her mid-20s, I think, something like that. But myself, Lydia, Jim, Camilla, others began to just build relationships. We didn't really see that Wendy will one day be Wendy, the bishop, the bartender to the bishop thing. We saw Wendy as a human being that we just loved. We wanted to pour our life into. She became, and Sal and the kids, they became a part of our family.
Oh, yeah.
We did life together. And to me, that's where you build your greatest disciples, is when they do life with you. Okay, by the way, you need to get this. We were taught, Lydia and I was taught literally what I'm going to tell you, and that is, hey, you're the lead pastor, you never get close to your people. You never let them see your human side. Don't let them see your warts and wrinkles and all that. So Lydia and I said, no, we're not going to fake it. We're going to be real people. And the only way that I can get close to you, Robert, is to spend time with you. Invite you into my world, and you get to see my warts, wrinkles, and all, right? And I get to see your warts, wrinkles, and all. We do life together, and then you build this relationship. Then out of that then flows ministry. And going back to the reason for this conversation, people want to stay close to that. People don't want to be around pastors and leaders who fake it. They don't. They want you to be real. And then they're attracted to that, and they stay around it. They do.
Now, that kind of leads into the next question. I don't think you even knew this, but so many times leadership coaches and speakers and all these people the people that should all over you,
right? They
tell you that you should create a culture in your organization, your church, whatever. You should create a culture. Culture. Mm-hmm. That's all we hear nowadays.
Right.
But what did you do as a small church that created lasting culture to be now the church that you are today? Mm-hmm. Because so many times I believe that you can be intentional about building culture, but sometimes you can't put the dots together without looking backwards. Mm-hmm. So what dots can you now put together? Because you said just a second ago that you and Lydia said you weren't going to be the shepherds that didn't lay with the sheep. You wanted to be in the mud with us.
Get the smell of sheep on you.
Yeah. So that's being intentional with culture. But you didn't know necessarily the dots that would connect later on.
I did not know.
So what are other things that you would say that you didn't maybe intentionally do, but just happened through culture?
Now, I do believe in creating culture and setting culture. Absolutely, I do. But when you're getting started, because that's what you're asking me, especially to the younger leaders out there, when you're just getting started in a new assignment or young in age, and you're setting culture. Basically what culture is it's your values. It's the things that you value. So if you look at New Life Church and the way we are now, you go back to 1988, and Lydia and I back then was setting culture, but we had never been taught culture.
Yeah.
We had never. Well, here's your 2-day conference on how do you set culture in your church. I'm not opposed to those. Thank God for those now. But what we did catch was this. Is that a leader will reproduce who they are. You teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. So in the early days, Lydia and I, it was about we got there before church started. We stayed long after it was over. We loved the people. We got off the stage, went out and touched the people. So we set a culture. Now all the pastors that we raised up, they did the same thing. And if they tried to do otherwise, trust me, Eddie Summers, he'll watch this. In fact, I'll tell him about this episode, but Eddie tells this story everywhere. Eddie tells this story about how I don't believe it was quite as drastic as Eddie says. He's pretty dramatic. But anyways, he was walking through the crowd really fast, and I kept telling him, Eddie, you got to slow down. Walk through the crowd slowly. You don't have to get up to the stage fast. Touch the people, listen to the people, pray with the people, right? And I kept telling him, I said, Eddie, if you don't slow down, I'm going to stop you, dude, right? And sure enough, one Sunday, he's walking through the little South Cape property really fast, or maybe New Horizon, whatever, but walking through there really fast, and He says, I grabbed him by the collar. I don't believe that. And I took him back, and I do remember taking him back in the the hallway somewhere where I was away from everybody. He said, I grabbed him by the shirt, and I said, Eddie Wayne, if you don't slow down and just be with the people, I'm going to fire you. You will not do this again. So he tells that story everywhere because it's a value with me that we are not divas. We are not. That's for the culture out there somewhere. But as a leader in the Church of Jesus, I'm called to love people, and I'm a servant of the people. I wash feet. That's what Jesus said. And so we established that culture all those years ago, and the leaders that we've raised up are now leaders that know that. That's a value with us. So you're saying, how do you develop that in the early days of your ministry? Just know who you are, because it's going to flow out of you. It's going to flow out of you, good and bad. So make sure you deal with your crud too, character issues and whatever. Deal with the stuff, because you're going to reproduce that in others.
Looking back, what are the W's and what are the L's that you would say you would maybe do differently when maintaining your leadership team and staff?
I think on the loss part, because a lot of times we're too quick to jump to the win side.
Yeah.
And that's not where people really grow and learn. I think you guys would really want to hear more about my losses than my wins. And I have plenty of those, seriously. When it comes to my staff and through the years, one thing I would say, in the early days, I was very codependent, and meaning that in order for me to feel good about me, I had to make you feel good about you. And I really, a lot of codependents end up in pastoring because it's a way for us to feel good about us. Because if I make you feel good about you, you'll feel good about me. Well, that's sick, is what that is. And I did go through a lot of counseling and therapy to figure that out and to kill that spider that was spinning those webs, because I think the big loss in the early years when it comes to my core and my staff was I wasn't real good at conflict resolution. And here's the problem with that: then I'm not telling you the truth. And if I wait more than 24 hours, the Bible says that's wrong. Don't let the sun go down in your wrath. Within 24 hours, take care of your conflict. I would go weeks and months. So what happens is stuff stockpiles, and then when it did come out, I kind of like vomited. I felt better, but that poor person was obliterated, and everybody around me saw this side of me that they should have never seen. So I would say this, that in the early years, my big failure was me not being honest. As a leader, if there's something wrong, you got to call it. Maxwell said this years ago. I'll never forget it. He said, if you know something's wrong in your organization and you're not resolving that conflict, you are embezzling from the organization. And when I thought, embezzling from the organization, how could that? Yeah, you are. Because ultimately it's going to hurt the organization. It's going to hurt your staff, your team. So I would say in the early days, that was a big, big loss. I didn't do that so well. Wins, I don't know. I
just look at the scoreboard.
Just look at the scoreboard. Yeah. It's been a fun run.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing, because I'm glad we're talking about this one, because I think we've aced this one through the years. Not perfect, but Lydia and I have been consistent about we're going to invest our lives in our friends. You can call it our staff, you can call it inner circle, you can call it whatever. We call it our friends. And there's a very corporate side, a business side of the church, absolutely, and I don't minimize that. But nobody gets into ministry for that. That's an essential. That's the administration to keep the movement going. But people get into what we're doing for Jesus based on the mission, the vision, and relationships. We're about love, and doing life together, and so.
That's good.
Good?
I love this episode. I thought it was going to be very interesting to see how, actually, I was shocked. We've gone from just the start of it, how to keep a staff,
right?
What made them fall in love with it, the relationship side of things. Then we went into the importance of the relationship, which is kind of been your guys' vocal point. And you
Right.
even stated that before that question was asked. And then really the lasting part of culture in the small church to the big church.
Yeah.
That was interesting to hear.
Yeah.
I really, really am intrigued. I'm a history person. I'm a history buff myself. And so to hear and to watch other churches and other people, to see them just starting off, and then to hear you say, oh, we did ABC and they're doing XYZ, but it's the exact same thing. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
in 10, 20,
That's it.
30 years, they could potentially be you.
They
6
absolutely will.
campuses, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think this episode is going to be really impactful for the leadership part of your inner circle,
Yeah.
your staff, the people who are on your team. So
Yeah. One last thought, Robert, before we go is now, because we just talked about how in the early years we really didn't know what culture was, but we were doing culture. At some point in your organization's life, in your department, your whatever it is, you do have to develop a written code. You have to develop
like core values.
core values.
Okay.
Because that's your culture. Your core values, that is your culture. And when you look at New Life Church and you got these top 10 core values, they haven't shifted. We've reworded them in
Yeah.
the last year. Last 2 years has got to make it more hip and cool, Wendy, and Camilla and Jim and all you.
Well, it was hard. For those who don't know, I don't know our old statement. They were like paragraphs and essays and long things, and now I can just say, hey, community is our culture, instead of we strive to get people to come together and be
See how
connected
sarcastic
with.
these young people are. And, hey, listen, here's the thing. Back in 1988 is a saying I used to use, that sacred cows make good hamburgers. But guess what's happening 30 years later? They're my sacred cows that these guys are eating up and making into hamburgers. So anyways, back to the values. The values, if you look at our top 10 now, they were the top 10 20 years ago.
Yes.
They are, because it's what's on the paper, I get that, but it's what's in the soul.
Yeah.
And when we say souls matter, that's the way we say it now. We used to say lost people matter to God. Saying the same thing. Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. Same thing. But it's more memorable, and I get it. It's cooler, it's succinct. But the point is that we really are driven by, people are going to walk through that door right there this Sunday. We want this to be a place for the unchurched. We love church people coming, that's cool, but we want New Life to always be a place for the unchurched. So my point is, it has to be written down at some point. It can't just all be like, hey, we all feel good and we think this is our culture. Okay? Anyways.
Perfect.
All right, man.
That's it.
That's all I got to say. Drop the mic, walk off.
Well, don't drop these mics. They're on stands.
It's true.
You flipped the table.
Hey, this is fun, Robert. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is episode 2. We've got many more coming. So, like I said last time, send us an email. Do you remember the email?
He'll tell you.
It is podcast@nlc.life. So that's podcast@nlc.life. Shoot us an email. We respond to every single one of them. We got a few emails last time from our first one, so that was really great. But also, leave us a comment on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. But all right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for PJ Talks.